And welcome back. So, our today topic in the history of economic thought class is new classical school. As we already covered the first part, and today we will cover the second part, and in the coming video, inshallah, we will cover the third part of this lecture. The neoclassical school, or we can say pure competition. So neoclassical economics is the name given to an economic theory that was developed at the end of the 19th and at the beginning of the 20th century in Europe. The main contribution to the theory were Leon Walras, Alfred Marshall, and Wilfredo. So at least three main differences between the earlier marginalist and the later neoclassical economists can be discerned. So the first one is the neoclassical thought stressed both the demand side as well as the supply side in determining the market prices of goods and services as well as the resources. So whereas the earlier marginalists tended to stress only the demand side alone. So the second difference is there are several of the new classical economists which took a far greater interest in the role of money in the economy than they did the earlier marginalist. And the third, or we can say the final difference is that neoclassical economists extended marginal analysis to market structure other than the pure competition, pure monopoly, and duopoly. One is Neoclassical school is a school of economic thought based chiefly on the writings of Alfred Marshall and those who follow his ideas and elaborate it upon his doctrine. So it follows closely the findings of the classical schools but emphasizes the limitations. Some of the classical doctrine, notably that of laissez-faire, which means there is no government intervention involved, so it makes uses of the conception of marginal utility and accept mathematical economic as one method of presentation. So in the world of new classical economics, the focus of analytical attention was directed to the process through which a market system allocates an economy's resources. From the point of view of the new classical economists, the problem deserving study was the functioning of the market system and its role as an allocator of resources. So the difference between the classical and neoclassical approach was the difference between the classical and orthodox theory. So classical and neoclassical theories are distinguished in terms of their themes in analyzing economy, methodology, and the value theory. So in terms of analyzing economy, or we can say the first one stage is the classical economists investigate two central economics questions. Number one question was what causes an economy to grow? And the second question, what determine the distribution of income into its three forms of wages, rent, and profit? So the classical theme of is the accumulation of and allocation of surplus output, and therefore their emphasis was on the production and on the factor that influence the supply of goods. So neoclassical economics, unlike its classical procedures, focuses on individual choices, which unavoidably reflect subjective preferences and belief and allocation of given resources among alternative uses. So classical theory paid comparatively little attention to choices of the individuals. The classical economists did not believe that there was much of great general interest to be said about the preferences of or choices of individuals. Instead, they divided agents into three major classes. Number first was the capitalist with their capital or stocks of accumulated goods, landlord with their land, and worker with their ability to work. So, neoclassical economics is a term variously used for approaches of economics focusing on the determination of prices, output, and income distributions in market through which supply and demand often mediated through a hypothesized maximization of utility by income-constrained individual and a profit by cost-constrained firms employing available information and factor of production in accordance with the rational choice theory. So new classical economists dominate microeconomics and together with Keynesian economics forms the neoclassical synthesis which dominate mainstream economics today. Although neoclassical economics has gained widespread acceptance by contemporary economists, there have been many critiques of neoclassical economics, often incorporated into new versions of neoclassical theory as awareness of economic criteria changes.